Okay guys, so before you get cooking, you want to make sure you clean your hands thoroughly with some nice soap and water. Make sure there are no dirty hands or germs here. Okay, so first of all, taking your 350 mils of warm water, you want to make sure it's warm, and your packet of yeast, dry yeast. We're going to mix the yeast into the warm water and add some sugar. Now when we made our hot cross buns before, I told you that yeast is a bacteria that is freeze-dried, so it's dehydrated. And so we're going to add moisture back to reactivate it, and we also, it likes warm temperature and it likes sugar as well, and that's how it respires. So once that we've got our packet of yeast, dried yeast in there, we're then going to add some sugar. You don't need a lot, you don't even need a tiny teaspoon, you need a pinch, so I'm actually just going to add like half a teaspoon into there, and then you give it a mix. And then you need to set it aside for 5 minutes until it gets a bit foamy. So when it starts to get a bit foamy, that's when the yeast is respiring and it's creating some carbon dioxide in the water. And the carbon dioxide rushes to the surface of the water, and that's when you know that your yeast is active and it's ready to be mixed into your flour. I got hiccups, sorry. So we're going to mix it, set it aside for 5 minutes, and then come back to that in a moment. So whilst we wait for our yeast to become active, we're going to put some flour and salt and olive oil into a big bowl. So you can either use 600 grams of plain flour, and that's what I've got right here, plain flour, or you can do cups, and that's 4 cups of flour. And this will make about 3 medium to large pizza bases. 2. Well, that's only a half, that one. There's the other half, and I need 1 more full cup. There you go. To that you add a teaspoon of salt. Ooh, hot. So a small spoon of salt into the mix too, and 60 mils, which is a quarter of a cup of olive oil. So I've got a little cup here. Oh, I've got a big bottle of olive oil. Cool. So I'm actually going to make a little well in the middle and add my olive oil. Good. Let's check on our yeast. Okay, so you can see the foaminess on the top of the yeast here. That means that it's ready. We're going to pour it into the well that we created in the center of our flour. So if I tip it up, I'll show you. Create a little well in the middle of your flour so you've got space to put your liquid. And then you're going to combine it into the center and start to create a dough. Now in a moment we're going to put this out onto a slightly floured surface, and we're going to knead it so that we can start to activate the yeast and get it to be really elasticated and springy like we did when we made our hot cross bun dough. And then we leave it to rest, just like we did then, to let it rise and prove so it doubles in size. So I'm going to mix this, and then I'll get back to you when I am ready to put it onto a floured surface to start kneading it. So onto my counter surface, I'm going to put out a little bit of flour just so that the dough doesn't stick. This is the dough that I've taken out of the bowl once I've combined the wet and the dry ingredients. And remember, I told you that kneading is about creating some elasticity and starting to get that yeast to become nice and stretchy. So you're going to want to knead your dough for about 10 minutes, roughly. It's going to become stretchy, bouncy and elastic, and then we're going to pop it back into the bowl to let it rise. So keep kneading your dough for at least 10 minutes, and I'll get back to you once I've done mine and we can have a look at what it looks like before we move on to the next stage. But really, this takes about 10-15 minutes to make your dough. You let it rise for about half an hour. The longer the better, so if you can leave it for an hour in a warm place, that would be better. But it takes about 15 minutes to make the dough, including the 5 minutes letting the yeast rehydrate. And then you can add your toppings and away you go. And once I have kneaded it for at least 10 minutes, it's a little bit paler in colour and it's quite springy and elasticated, kind of like chewing gum, into a bowl. And it's the same bowl that I used to mix my ingredients. I just gave it a little wash. I am oiling using a paper towel and some olive oil the surface of the bowl just so that the dough doesn't stick. And then into the bowl I'm going to sit my dough. I'm going to cover it. You can cover it with a tea towel or muslin cloth. I don't have muslin cloth at the moment. I should buy one, I know. So I'm unfortunately going to use cling film, which is not the most environmentally friendly, but it's what I have. So I'm going to seal up my bowl and then pop my dough into a warm space. If you've got your windowsill and the sun is shining, you can pop it on the windowsill and that will do just fine. You want it to rise for a minimum of 30 minutes, but the longer the better. So I'm probably going to leave mine for an hour, and then I can start rolling it out and adding my toppings. When I roll it out, I'll show you what it looks like and when I pop my toppings on. So we want it to at least double in size. Woo, it's a bit wobbly. We want it to double in size. So if you don't have a warm space such as a windowsill, you can put it on top of your radiator. I've warmed my oven and I'm going to turn off the heat now and just let it sit in the warm oven and let it get nice and bubbly, double in size. Okay, so once you've taken your dough out of that warm spot that you've left it in to proof and rise, it should roughly double in size. And if you can see from the texture of it here, it's really soft and fluffy. That's how you know that it's fully proved. Now you don't need to knock this dough back at all because you're going to roll it out anyway. So make sure you flour your surface. This is 1/3 of the dough that I made. I've already rolled out 2 quite nice sized pizzas onto 2 oiled trays ready to go in the oven. And I've set up my oven at roughly 180 degrees, which is roughly gas mark 6. So once you pop your dough down, use a nice heavy rolling pin or a glass bottle, whatever you've got close at hand. If you're using a glass bottle or a plastic bottle, make sure that it's not going to break in your hand. You want to be safe when you're doing this. You can also flour your hands so that the pizza dough is not going to stick to that too. Now, because I've got square trays, I'm going to roll out the dough into a square or a long rectangle shape. You want to apply equal pressure as you roll the dough forwards and back. You can probably see that when I take the pin off, the dough kind of shrinks back to the center, and that's how I know that it's going to be nice and fluffy when I bake it. So I'm going to roll this out quite thin. I want some thin crust pizza. And like I said, I got rectangular trays, so I'm going to create a rectangular dough shape. Ooh, rolling out from the middle all the way to the ends, stretching the dough. It shrinks back towards the middle. Beautiful, look at that dough. Let's pop this onto the tray. So onto an oiled tray. If it's oil, it will crisp up the base and then you'll get a nice, even, thin crust pizza. If you wanted to, you could always create your own stuffed crust by chopping up little pieces of mozzarella cheese, such as this one. Creating like a little border of mozzarella cheese and then folding your ends in, and that will create your own stuffed crust pizza. You can do little hot dogs in there too, or little pieces of pepperoni. Chili sauce might be nice if you're creating like a chickeny pizza. So there you go. Once it's all in the pan, you don't have to worry about pricking it. It's not like pastry. Be aware that any bits that are on the sides are obviously going to be a little bit thick and crunchy. That's okay, I expect that. So I'm just going to trim this edge down. And let's put some toppings on these bad boy pizzas and get them into the oven. Add your tomato paste on top. You can add some Italian seasoning and herb as well if you want. Spread it out across your dough. And then get ready to load your toppings on top. So layer up. Leon's putting some salami on here. And then he'll put his veggies. He's got some sun-dried tomatoes, some olives, pineapple. He's got chilies and anchovies to go on. And then he's going to put some mozzarella and layer parmesan. Oh, and he's got some peppers over there too. So now we are layering on all of our veggies. We put our red peppers, green pepper, red onion on here. Next up we're going to add pineapple. We've put sun-dried tomatoes on there. And then some little extra bits before we put the cheese on. It's cheese time. Lots and lots and lots of mozzarella on there. Let's put these pizzas now in the oven. So here are our pizzas straight out the oven. Probably took a little bit longer than 12 minutes. I'm going to say nearly 20 minutes. Hey, Leon?
Yeah, but we have 4 pizzas in there.
We did. And the dough is fresh, so you just need to check that it's evenly cooking into the middle, so that's where most of the moisture is going to sit.
It should feel firm underneath.
Yes. They look wicked. Tasty, delicious. So you can make your own homemade fresh dough and make your own pizzas. Yummy. I'll see you guys next week.